sometimes controversial, always politically incorrect, and pro-life without exception, without compromise, and without apology. It's the Pro-Life America podcast with your hosts, Sarah Waits and the president of Life Dynamics, Mark Crutcher.
Hello, guys. Welcome to the Pro-Life America podcast. I'm Mark Crutcher.
And I'm Sarah Waits.
And we hope that everybody had a great Christmas.
Yeah, I had a truly marvelous Christmas, and I hope you guys too. And while we're at it, we hope you guys have a wonderful New Year.
When it happens here in the next day or so.
Yeah.
And, of course, we're all pulling for Alabama to win their bowl game, obviously.
Are we? Is that like a general consensus? Because I wasn't there for that poll.
Let's put it this way. Everybody here should be pulling for Alabama if they know what's good for them.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I guess I don't know what's good for me.
Yeah. Anyway.
I have more important things to deal with, such as, on our first article that we're talking about today, a pro-lifer was arrested for silent prayer near an abortion facility. Now, this was in England, specifically in Birmingham, and Birmingham has a deal which criminalizes individuals perceived to be, quote, engaged in any act of approval or disapproval or attempted act of approval or disapproval in relation to abortion, including verbal or written means, prayer, or counseling. Isabel Vaughan-Spruce was arrested and charged on 4 counts after she told the police that she might be praying silently when they were questioning her when she was standing near the BPAS Robert Clinic, which is an abortion clinic in Birmingham. Now, she wasn't carrying any signs. She was completely silent. But despite all that, police were tipped off by an onlooker who suspected that she might be silently praying in her head. This sounds like something like from 1984.
And again, this is in England, but let's don't think this isn't coming here.
Yeah.
And the people in the Biden administration wouldn't welcome this sort of thing if they thought they could get away with it right now.
Yeah.
Because what we've seen in the past is all these outrageous things that we used to report about on Life Talk or that we've written about in our newsletters or that I've put out articles about that happened in foreign countries eventually came here.
Yeah, and this was just a local deal, but it looks like England and Northern Ireland are considering instituting something like this on a wide scale.
I saw a picture of this woman standing there. You had to have some sort of ability to read her mind. She wasn't being demonstrative about it. She just literally standing there. And what they're saying is, we're going to put this woman in jail because of what she was thinking.
Or what we think she was thinking. It's not even necessarily what she was thinking. It's what we think she was thinking.
Right. This is mind-boggling. I mean, this would not have happened in the Soviet Union. They wouldn't have been able to say, we're going to put people in jail, not because of what they say or what they do, but just because of what we think
they're thinking.
So we're going to put them in some Siberian prison somewhere.
To top it all off, as part of her conditions for bail, she was given restrictions on engaging in public prayer beyond the censorship zone, stating that it was necessary to prevent further offenses. So they're regulating her ability to pray out loud in the rest of the country. On top of that, she was told that she should not contact a local Catholic priest who was also involved in pro-life work. Now, that condition was later dropped, probably because they couldn't get away with it. However, how they were getting away with imposing restrictions on her ability to do prayer elsewhere is beyond me.
The whole thing is beyond stupid.
Yeah.
This is thought control. That's what these people are looking at. It even goes beyond thought control because it's not what she's thinking. It's what we think she's thinking.
Police were interrogating her, and they were showing her pictures or video of previous times when she's been there. Keep in mind, while the clinic was closed, the clinic wasn't even open.
Right.
And she's just standing there. And they were asking her what she was thinking at that time in her head. I mean, you couldn't ask me what I was thinking a month ago if you showed me a picture at the time.
Most of the time, I don't want to know what you're thinking. Believe me. You or Sheila or Tulane or any of you. It's kind of scary. But this is frightening.
Yeah.
That the British people would stand still for this. There should be riots in the streets over there, even by people who disapprove of being pro-life. They should be outraged. But again, I want to make the point. Everything that we've seen happen in other countries related to abortion eventually has happened here.
Yeah.
I can remember back in the day when the overwhelming majority of abortions done in this country or approved by people in this country were just early term. They're saying, no, this has to be very early in the pregnancy, long before the baby's recognizable. And that's what most people approved of. And in China at the time, they were doing late-term abortions, forced late-term abortions, where they were sending vans to women's houses because they were having
dragging them off the street,
because they were having their second child. And people were saying, well, yeah, but that's China. That'll never happen here. Now we have third trimester abortions. You have the abortion industry saying that you can't even prohibit abortions right up to the moment of birth.
Yeah.
Right up to the woman is in labor, you can't prohibit abortions.
Perhaps one of the most liberal abortion bills that was passed was in New York when they amended their state constitution.
Right.
And they were clapping and cheering, applauding. They lit up some of the buildings there in celebration of this deal.
So don't think this stuff won't come here, because it will.
Speaking of crazy things that have happened, so the FDA has changed the packaging for Plan B to, in their words, clarify that it's not an abortion pill. To give some background information, it's designed to temporarily delay the release of an egg from the ovary. But its effectiveness to prevent pregnancy really depends on where you are in your fertility cycle. Up until now, Plan B packaging and the generics have stated that taking the pill might be able to prevent a fertilized egg from implanting.
Back when this thing was being voted on to be made over the counter, even be legal, they were saying it could stop implantation, and that one of the functions of it was that even if the egg was fertilized, it wouldn't implant, so the woman would never be pregnant because the egg had not implanted.
However, they're changing this because according to the FDA, they're saying that medical professionals say this claim is not by scientific evidence, but was included on the label in order to get over-the-counter status approved. They say that evidence does not support that the drug affects implantation or the maintenance of a pregnancy after implantation, therefore does not terminate a pregnancy.
This is a word game, and the pro-life movement is somewhat responsible for them being able to do this, and I'll tell you why. We have focused so much on saying that our mission is to prevent abortion. It's not.
Yeah.
Our mission is to prevent the killing of an unborn child. And that occurs after fertilization. It has nothing to do with implantation. We don't care whether the child has implanted or not implanted. We don't think that child should be killed. That is a living human being from the moment of fertilization. And again, this goes back to something that we've talked about in recent shows, especially now that this thing has been thrown back to the states. We need to quit asking these politicians what their position is on abortion. We need to be telling these guys, I don't care what your position on abortion is. I don't care what you think about it. I don't care what you believe.
What you feel.
What you feel. I don't care about what you think about abortion. That's irrelevant to me. What I want to know is, what do you think about the unborn child? Because, let me ask you a hypothetical question, because this does happen.
Go for it.
All right. Most pro-lifers say we're opposed to abortion. But let's say the woman's not pregnant.
Okay. Now,
do we oppose that abortion?
Well, doesn't abortion require a pregnancy?
No. The medical definition of an abortion is the emptying of a uterus. A miscarriage is a spontaneous abortion from a medical standpoint.
Yeah.
So our issue is not that we oppose abortion. Our issue is that we oppose the intentional killing of that unborn child. So when we let the focus become just on the issue of abortion and not what we think about the unborn child, then we allow for this sort of thing for the Biden administration at the behest of the abortion industry in order to sell more Plan B to do these sort of mind games and word games that they're playing. And this is going to be very important as we go forward in our political discourse now over this issue being back to the states. Yeah,
because there's going to be ancillary issues besides just abortion procedures itself. It's going to be issues like Plan B, and all these other ones are eventually going to get dragged in at some point.
And all sorts of things.
But this is part of a bigger picture, and to give you some background information on it, for 12 years, the pro-choice side waged a war on age and prescription requirements for Plan B before it was eventually made over-the-counter to anyone. Not terribly long after, a federal judge ordered the FDA to make it available for women 17 years and older without a prescription. Plan B vending machines started popping up on college campuses. The first one was in 2010 at Shippensburg University, but now there is at least 14 universities and growing who have these Plan B vending machines. And I guarantee you this FDA deal of it not causing an abortion is part of any resistance that they could be getting on these college campuses, because they want to expand this and they want to be giving this to anybody.
And let me ask you a question. Let's say that you're 14, but you're not in college, obviously, if you're 14 years old. All right. But you know that these vending machines are on college campuses. Let's say here in Denton, we got two major universities here. We've got University of North Texas with almost 50,000 students, and we've got Texas Women's University, which is the largest women's university in the United States.
Yeah.
All right. Every 13, 14-year-old kid in this community knows that these two universities are there.
Well, they don't have to go there. It's available to anybody regardless of their age.
But what I'm saying is, even if you put these restrictions on them, how does the vending machine police that?
Yeah.
And the answer is the vending machine can't police it, and they don't care. Mm-hmm. But again, we've got to get away from this myopic focus just on abortion.
When we're so hyper-focused, we get tunnel vision and we miss everything on the side.
As we go further down this trail of this thing now being in the state legislatures, we're in a sense going back a little bit in our history. And now we've got to attack abortion itself. Mm-hmm. And the way you do that is by making sure that people have the right idea about the unborn child. Mm-hmm. If you ask somebody, you can ask Hillary Clinton what she thinks about abortion, and she has said publicly. Now, this is one of the most godless, radical, pro-abortion people you'll ever hear tell of. But she'll tell you that she opposes abortion. She doesn't like abortion. She's not comfortable with it. And I heard her say one time in an interview that she thinks every abortion is symptomatic of a failure. Mm-hmm. They're all bad. But that doesn't mean she thinks should be stopped.
Yeah.
However, if you could get someone to say, yes, the unborn child is a living human being from the moment of fertilization, then you don't need to explain anything else. Automatically, abortion becomes wrong, just like murdering them later on in a convenience store holdup is wrong. Mm-hmm. So that's why it's so important that we understand that the focus has to be on what we think about the unborn child, not what we think about abortion. Abortion is just the mechanism by which the unborn child is killed.
Mm-hmm. And if anybody has any questions or wants to learn more about the Plan B vending machines, I will put a link in the description of the podcast episode where we go more in depth about that issue.
Yeah. Anyway, this is going to get more and more important as time goes on.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of things becoming more important in politics.
More important, there was some research done in exit polling about the 2020 elections. 2022 elections.
Yeah.
The one we just had. And this kind of reflects something that we've seen in the past. It's not a lot different, actually, than what I've seen stats in the past. But it's very interesting. Married men voted Republican by 20 points higher than they voted Democrat. Mm-hmm. Married women voted 14 points higher for the Republicans than for the Democrats. Unmarried men voted 7% higher for Republicans over Democrats. Unmarried women voted for Democrats 37% higher than they voted for Republicans.
Yes, and this has been reflected in 2020 election data by the AP. In that one, they found that 62% of unmarried women voted for Biden versus 37% voting for Trump.
Now, let's just use women only. Mm-hmm. If women voted 14 points higher for Republicans over Democrats, but unmarried women voted 37% higher for Democrats over Republicans, that's a 51% gap just among women, based on whether they're married or unmarried. Why would that be? I mean, I'm going to tell you what I think it is.
Well,
but you tell me.
It's not hard for me because according to those poll results by CNN, what do you think was the most important issue reported by the voters in this last election? Yeah.
Right.
Inflation.
Right.
Abortion came second. It was not the most important issue. It was inflation. So when you think about economics, the Democrats are pro every single aid and assistance plan. The Socialist Democrats are all about universal basic income.
I think an interesting study would be, I think I know what the results would be, but an interesting study would be to go back in time, let's say go back 50 years and then come forward and look at the divorce rate and see how the divorce rate and the percentage of women voting for liberals corresponds.
Well, this is not necessarily divorce rate, but in an article by the Washington Examiner about these statistics, it says the number of unmarried women is growing every year. From the earliest census up to the 1950, roughly 80% of households were led by a married couple. By 2000, that percentage had fallen to 52%. And by 2010, for the first time in the nation's history, most households did not include a married couple.
Right. We all know And it's not a derogatory thing, but we all know that women tend to be very security oriented.
That's why you can see videos on YouTube of guys jumping off of houses onto trampolines or into swimming pools, and why you won't see women doing that.
Well, that's a whole different story. That's a whole...
It's all connected.
No, that's not connected.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, as women get older, they want security. And really what the government has done is they said, if women aren't going to be in married relationships where they have some security, we'll be their security. And so we'll be their sugar daddy, basically. And that's what the government has done.
And I think that's the big driving push behind things such as the paying off of student loans, UBI, Universal Basic Income, the socialized healthcare stuff that's trying to be pushed. I think all of that is connected to that very issue.
Yep. You know, back in the 60s, and I checked on this and it's not true anymore, but back when AFDC started, Aid to Families with Dependent Children, one of the things that the government did was they would go and investigate these women that were getting AFDC to pay for their children. And if there was a man in the house, he didn't have to be married, he didn't have to live there. If he was just a man in the house, they lost their payments. Now, I checked on it, and apparently they don't do that anymore. They're not that extreme. But that's where it started.
Yeah.
The government telling to women, you don't necessarily have to have a man in your life to be secure. We'll take care of you. And so if that's not true, forget the men in this deal. Tell me why there's a 51% gap between married women and unmarried women. If it's not the fact that these unmarried women are looking for security and they're finding it in the government.
Yeah.
So the government has become the significant other, if you will, or the married partner of all these women.
The provider. Yeah.
The provider of all these women.
You know, we talk about this and we talk about Social Security and we talk about all these welfare programs. And I always like to preface it by saying we're not against them. We don't hate the programs or anything like that. But it's a balancing act, right? There's a tipping point to where it's too much or where the way that you're making these programs doesn't actually help people get out of poverty. It can actually reinforce poverty.
It puts them in poverty. It keeps them there forever. You know, there's another issue here, too. I don't know how big an issue it is. Having been 40 years older than you, for example, I came up in a different...
You came up in a different time? I'm
time.
shocked. I am so shocked.
And I'm not saying that we should go back to the time when an unmarried woman having a baby was shunned by the society.
No, I don't think that was good.
That wasn't good, but we shouldn't have thrown the baby out with the bathwater. And so we've gone from that to now, not only is there no stigma attached to an unmarried woman having a baby, unmarried women get pregnant on purpose to have babies and don't even want a man in their life. And those women, I think, are going to be naturally more tied to government programs. Even if they don't use them, they want them there just in case.
Well, it's interesting you're talking about unmarried women having a child on purpose. I have read a number of articles, and I unfortunately don't have any links or information right off of the top of my head, but basically the statistics show that unmarried women are freezing their eggs and doing IVF from a donor at larger rates than in the past. And of course, not just IVF, but freezing your eggs is an extremely expensive endeavor. And so there's been some people who've been calling for like government assistance of those kind of programs. But you have a higher number of women who are doing that and having babies on their own because a lot of them have put career first, they put relationships last, and then all of a sudden they get to a certain point and they're like, oh, I want kids, but I don't have that partner. And so they do it by themselves, which I don't think is necessarily bad or anything. But you're seeing the way women do family life changed radically from even the 1960s.
And there's some other factors that are playing into this. There was a series on the local ABC affiliate here several years ago about dating in Dallas, the dating scene in Dallas. And one of the things they were shocked by was finding the number of women in these dating situations that said they preferred much older men. Some of them much older, 35 years older.
Yeah.
And when they started asking these women, why, you're in your 20s and you want to marry a 50-year-old guy or a 55-year-old guy, why is that? And these women were saying, look at the 25-year-old guys. They're not interested in getting married, so they don't want them. They said, you marry some 50-year-old guy, he's already successful, you already know what kind of guy he is, he may have been married, so he's already into making commitments and supporting his children, supporting his wife. We don't want this guy that wants to play games all night with all his friends. And I think that that's part of this deal, why unmarried women have a 51% higher rate of voting for Democrats than married women do.
And looking at all this data, I don't think it's all necessarily bad. There was an interesting thing that Washington Examiner found. Young voters' enthusiasm for Democrats has shrunk. 53% of voters under 30 voted in favor of the Democratic House candidates in the 2022 midterm elections. That is 53 compared to the 61% support that they saw back in 2020 and the 64% support that they saw in 2018. So that's a huge drop from just a few years ago. So I don't think it's necessarily all bad.
You've heard me say a million times, when we see bad news in the pro-life movement or we see real good news in the pro-life movement, things are never as good as they seem and things are never as bad as they seem. They get blown out of proportion by the two extremes.
Yeah.
And we see that continually, like we had the overturn of Roe during this year. And to some people, this was like the second coming. Well, no, it's never as good as it seems. It's never as bad as it seems. And so these statistics are the same way.
But anyway, I just wanted to leave the episode on a positive note there.
Is that your version of a positive note?
Yes.
Well, thank you. That's very nice to know.
That's what I'm here for. A
Right.
little ray of sunshine.
Anyway, you got anything else?
That's it.
Listen, we won't see you again this year.
No, it'll be 2023.
We want to remind you, too, that Life Dynamics is supported by your donations, and that has not gone well this year for a variety of reasons.
Speaking of inflation.
And inflation, and there's other things. And there's a certain element out there of people in the pro-life movement who, because of the overturn of Roe, think we've won. And they're moving on to other things. That's not any good for us.
Yeah.
We haven't won. We've got major battles in front of us. So please don't forget about us in your donations. We can't do anything without you.
And if it helps sweeten the pot a little bit, your donations may be tax deductible.
It may be.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
You have to talk to your accountant. We're not your accountant.
We're not your accountant, but the deadline is coming in.
We are a 501c3 nonprofit corporation, so if you donate money to us, you may get it off your taxes. But that's not the reason to do it. The reason to do it is
I just
to
said
save
that's
the
like the
unborn
cherry
child.
on top, yeah.
We're here to save the unborn child. Anyway, until next Thursday, remember, Life Dynamics is not here to put up a good fight.
We're here to win.
Because winning is how the killing stops. We'll see you next year.
Bye, guys.